Okay, welcome everybody to my talk about Aiducation International. I'm Hannes Röst, and as Abdullah already mentioned, I'm currently pursuing my PhD here at ETH Zurich. And I'm also a board member of this for impact organization, so we like to call ourselves, instead of for profit, a for impact organization, because we are social entrepreneurs and we do not want to maximize our monetary profit, but we want to maximize the impact that we have on the world. So I've been working for this organization since about 4 years, and I've mainly been active in web development and web application development. So the basic principle, Aiducation International, is based on our two fundamental ideas that actually most people, I think also in here, would agree upon. The first principle is that education is the most important factor for the personal development of a human being. The second one is that empowered people are the most important factor for the economic, political, and social development of a country. However, when we look at the map today, and this is data from the World Bank, where we see high school access in the world, there is a very clear lack of access in the areas that are currently least developed. So here we have less than 50% of the people having access to basic high school education. And in total, this makes about 400 million young people per year that do not have access to high school education. We estimate that about 10% of these people are extremely bright, are extremely motivated, and could actually impact their society in various positive ways if they were given a chance to realize their full potential. We have to conclude that currently over 40 million high potential students do not have access to basic high school education that would allow them to pursue their dreams and realize their full potential. So what do we actually do? I would like to start with a story of a student that we met in Kenya. This is Julius, and he's a student, and he would like to go to school to study the law such that he can become a judge and fight corruption and fight for the poor and disadvantaged in his society. However, he's prevented from doing this because for going to school he needs to pay the school fees, or his parents need to come up with school fees that are about $700 per year. Now in a country like Kenya, this is a huge sum of money, and even people struggling and borrowing money from their neighbors and from their community can hardly ever come up with the full sum over 4 years if they do not have access to a large amount of money or income. So what happens is that students like Julius are sent home from school. So they cannot go to school anymore, even though they are accepted at a very good school and are academically achieving very well. So to alleviate this problem, Aiducation International, or our founders, started to do something. And what we do is we give out 4-year high school scholarship for people like Julius and now over 600 other students in Kenya to transform these students from talented and needy students to talented and empowered students. So they can go to school for 4 years, the complete education, accommodation, food and board is paid for, they can focus on their study, they can focus on their academics, and then they take the final test of high school and can apply for government scholarships to go to university. So it's really this small part of school education after primary school, which is free in Kenya, and university where scholarships exist, these 4 years where there is a gap in education that people cannot bridge if they don't have the funds available. Now the scholarships of Aiducation International are unique in several ways. So the first way our scholarships are unique is that we focus completely on education. So we spend, and we promise to spend over 90% of the donors' resources directly in school fees. And these school fees are paid to the school and not to the student. So they directly pay for the school fees, and we have only very small administrative overhead. Secondly, we focus as one of the very few organizations in this area in the non-governmental sector on performance. So we do not select just any students, but because we have limited funds, we select those students for whom we think they will perform best academically and will have the highest impact if we allow them to achieve education. So we choose the top 10% of the class in our applicant pool, and we also request yearly progress reports and report cards that allow us and the donors here in Switzerland to check the progress of their students and to check that the money was really invested in a student that values education and that takes his one chance in a lifetime to go to school and perform as best as he or she could. Thirdly, we have a very high focus on transparency. We have always a one-to-one relationship between the donor and the student. So in our organization, it's really the donor decision that allows a specific student to go to school. And people like you as a donor can actually decide which student, which vision is most convincing. And you can select a student if you think that a doctor is most needed in Kenya. You can select a student to support one that would like to become a doctor. Or if you think a teacher is what is most needed in Kenya, you can select a student who wants to become a teacher. And there is a one-to-one relationship. This specific student will get his or her life turned around by 180 degrees and going from his village, sitting at home, not being able to school, to being in school, learning, and having 4 years of full high school education. Finally, the last point that makes our scholarships unique is the so-called mentorship academy. So we do not only financially support our students, but also intellectually. We have multiple such retreats per year where all of our students gather, and we do workshops that are related to job interviews, using modern technology, writing business plans, and how to cope once people graduate and go to university. What are the things they need to learn? Because these students are from very poor areas. They are often orphans and do not have role models and brothers and sisters that can tell them how it is to go to the capital, Nairobi, and study at university. So this is very helpful for them to learn what they actually need to consider once they start the next step in their life. So with these 4 points, we think that we have the highest possible impact in a country like Kenya. Now, how does this look in practice? In practice, we have in a developed country like Switzerland, a so-called edu-maker, the person that makes the education possible, and an edu-fellow in a country like Africa. Now, the edu-fellow forwards his application or her application to the Swiss chapter, and the donor can look at multiple applications, select one of them, and choose to send this student specifically to school. Then the donor transfers the money to the Kenyan chapter. This gets transferred directly to the school. The student never sees the money. The only thing she or he knows is that they can now go to school without any further worries. And we have then yearly progress reports that allow to check the progress of the students and the grades. So what did we achieve so far? We were founded in 2007, and since then we have been continuously growing, achieving more and more scholarships, sending more and more students to school. Now we have over 600 students that we support, and we have won prizes and collaborations with various organizations. Most notably, in 2008, we won the Venture Kick Award of ETH Zurich, which is usually given to startups in the tech and biotech field, but the jurors were so convinced of our idea of a for-profit organization that they decided to give this prize to us instead of a high-tech spin-off company from ETH Zurich. Now, how can you support us, or actually not us, but one of the students in a developing country, how can you support them if you feel that this is something that might actually contribute to the development of a country and the development of the world globally. We have a website, www.aiducation.org, where we have dozens of profiles of students still waiting for a scholarship. And here are 4 students picked out. These are people that could not go to school if they don't receive a scholarship within the next year. And all of these have plans and ambitions, how they want to plan their career, what they want to do when they grow up, and how they want to transform their country and make their country a better place. Thank you very much for your attention. Yes?
It's a good idea that you give offers like people who want to study and improve their education. But also when you, for example, if you give opportunity to a person to study, that person also gives opportunity to others to teach in society,
yeah.
which is a good thing, that they kind of continue the cycle of giving opportunity.
Yes. Exactly. I mean, this is the kind of effect we are hoping for a multiplier effect, that the people that we support, they will now have the rest of their lives, of 50, 60 years of active life, they will make a positive impact in their society, and which would have been much smaller if they hadn't received this initial 4 years of education. And we already see this. We had last week, we had the first of our graduates collecting money and supporting a student herself. So this is exactly the type of effect that we want to see, so that in the long run our organization is not even necessary, and people, the civil community in Kenya itself would actually support these type of efforts. Yes?
Since Africa is so big, so one would like to know what is the mechanism which is used to select not only the people but the country. Why Kenya, why not other countries?
So there are multiple reasons why Kenya was a good place for us, and one of the main reasons is that we have a very strong team on the ground there, which is very important for trust for our side and also for our donors. And then an additional reason is that they actually speak English as a national language, so it's easy to communicate and also easy for the students to communicate with the donor. So they write an essay, they have to write an essay in the application, and because this is in English, it's understandable for people here. And then we also think it's one of the countries that is stable enough in Africa where education actually can have a long-term effect. So I think the more stable a country is, the more you would assume that the long-term effect of education will stay, because this pays off most in a stable economy where education can really bring additional value to the table. Yeah.
How many students have you already supported since 2007?
So we have now over 600 students that we support. Yes?
Can you comment on the education level in high school and colleges in Kenya? Do you think they are getting good education with the support?
So the education level on high school is that there are multiple different schools, and the schools are of different quality. So there are regional schools, there are district schools, and then there are national schools. And we usually try to select students that go to the highest level of schools, so the national schools. And this is also guaranteed through that we select the best 10% of each class, even as applicants. And I would say the best schools there are probably very comparable to gymnasiums here, high schools here, whereas the worst schools probably are not. Yeah. Yes?
Do you consider it an advantage that basically donor and beneficiary have a one-to-one relationship? On the other hand, how should I know what is best for the country? What is really needed there? Marketing might really introduce some kind of efficiency that we should not there in terms of data effect.
Yes, so the one-to-one relationship we really see as a benefit for the donor, because what we want also to be able to do is that a donor has a very direct effect. And we have seen that this is not always the case in other organizations where you spend some money but you don't really know where the money is going. So we think this also helps in transparency, that you really see, I spent this money and then in a very short time later, this student goes to school. So I think the only drawback, as you mentioned, there might be several drawbacks, but one drawback I see is that the amount of money is relatively high. So the amount of money is fixed, and it's the amount of money you need to send one student to school. So this is kind of the price of what you have to pay. So there might be, as you say, it might be that we could attract more people, more donors, if the amount of money to donate would be lower. Yeah. But we think it's also in interest of transparency, it makes sense for us to have this one-to-one relationship. Yeah.
Have you been tracking the career of the students once they have the test groups? Are they actually, or I just want to comment the students that now say they want to test route actually will study some space science?
Well, they will probably not go to space, but this is also true for most Swiss students that would like to become an astronaut. But then they might become an engineer, so they might be interested in how things work or how machines work, and then become a technical engineer and help in the development of their country. And we had just last year the biggest batch of students graduating, so since we're rather young, we don't yet have that many graduates. But already last year we saw that most of them are now on track to go to university. And we do track them on Facebook, but actually it's rather hard in a country like Africa to really track people so it's on a voluntary basis. So we try to stay in contact with them, and most of them actually choose to stay in contact with us. And so for these cases, we know what they're currently doing. I think you were first.
So you are a for-profit organization?
For impact, not for profit.
Okay. But you are not considering yourself as non-profit?
Well, this is a distinction. So we are non-profit in the sense that we do not make a profit, and we also are all volunteers here in Switzerland. We don't get a salary, but we would like to distinguish ourselves from other organizations in the sense that we say we are somewhere in between a company and a very traditional aid agency. And we are in a sense a company that we have an objective, and our objective is not to maximize profits, but to maximize impact in the world. And this is what we try to do. But we have actually very little administrative overhead of currently 10%, and most of the work is done on a volunteer basis.
Do you feel that people would consider it better if it's like a company or if it's like a non-profit? Have you felt it?
Well, I think in the end it really depends not what you say, but what you do. So, and I think what we do is we do have a bit more an entrepreneurship approach to the problem, and by focusing on performance, I think we also take a different approach than other people. So in certain aspects, we do have this type of approach, yeah. And of course, yeah, this is sometimes an advantage depending on whom you talk to, right? But many people perceive it as a fresh perspective. Yes?
What about the team locally arranging? What kind of expertise do they have? And how much and how far are you supported by local people? I think that with having a local support, it can work on cultures.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually something that's extremely important, and we have a local team consisting, I think, of about 6 volunteers, and they are medical doctors, teachers, and other people that are very interested in the work that we do. And for these people, they have to really get to know the applicants. They have to determine the neediness of the applicant, and this is actually rather hard. So in Kenya, they have this test after the primary school, and this is national-wide the same, so it's rather easy to determine which students are really doing well academically. But to determine which students are really needy and are deserving of the money, this is much harder, and for this we rely on the local team. And they have much more information about the country itself, and they can tell if somebody is coming from a specific village, they know that this person doesn't have a lot of money. Or if they, even from the dialect, they can tell how rich somebody is sometimes. So this type of specific knowledge and cultural knowledge is very important, and we are very lucky that we have volunteers there, and actually they are all Kenyans. So we also try to not just educate the students, but we also try to build this type of civil spirit in the Kenyan community, that they also see that they have to do their part. They have to work for their society to make things better, and they cannot just wait for money to arrive, but they actually have to do their part. So this is, I think, also a big part of our philosophy. Yeah.